Mr. Dave here with you. I'm going down to the old neighborhood on Minnehaha Street. I've had some requests from some of my subscribers to do a video and show the areas where the Zodiac attacked me in that neighborhood and to give some of the details. I was going to save that for my book, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a few of them. There were around 5 or 6 attacks. The one I told you about on my last video, I believe, was the one where Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers hid in the bushes and tried to shoot me through the window of the patio where I slept. I won't be able to show you that because the bushes have been dug up from that side of the building, and they added another building on there where the bushes used to be. There were a couple of attacks in the alley. One when I was climbing a sign, another one when I was climbing a tree, and the other one where they tied me to a post. One where they tied me to the post I won't be able to show you because it's in someone's yard who I believe to have been family members of Frank Morris at the time, and or possibly family members of the Anglin brothers, because I think these guys may have been related. There's just not a lot of information out there about these guys' origin. And there's the house where I used to live. This is the alleyway where I was going to show you how those guys attacked me. The only problem is it's no longer an alleyway. It's grown up with bushes. This is where the little gas station was at that I told you about. There used to be a gas station, now it's a car lot, and I used to walk behind it there to get to my house. And I would go down what used to be an alleyway right here. This was wider back then. You could drive a truck down there. The garbage truck used to go up and down this road. And I think I've shown you this before, but I'm going to show it to you one more time. The tree that I used to climb was right in here in this line. And I felt something grabbing my right leg. I was trying to look in a bird's nest. Remember, I was only 5 years old. I like to watch the little birdies grow up. And something was grabbing my leg. I thought it was the mama bird picking at me. And I looked down, and there's Big John Anglin's face looking up at me. And I will never, ever forget that long jaw of his. And I kicked him really hard, and I managed to get away from there by climbing across a trellis and onto the roof of my house, and I jumped down the other side, which would have been in the back of this house right here. This part of the house is still there, and the backyard is right there, and the back door, you can see the back of the building. You can't see the door because they have a privacy fence now, but this was all open. And there used to be an auto parts place right here in this building. And this was an area where they would throw out all their cardboard, and the garbage truck would come down this alley and pick it up. And I would go around this house during the day and play, and when I would get done playing, around noon it would start getting warm, I would come through here. There was no privacy fence here. And I would go over here and I would crawl into that cardboard, thinking that I was just going to lay down and rest and then get up and go in the house. What happened is I would fall asleep. Now one day I fell asleep in there, and the garbage man almost picked me up with the cardboard and to throw it away. So my mother told me, don't get in there anymore. But I got really, really tired one day when I crawled into the cardboard over there, and I fell asleep. Now, this is another attack that I just recently remembered. It's really scary to me. You know, every time I remember one of their attacks, I keep thinking this is the last one. There can't be any more. But I keep remembering more, but I really, really think this is the last one because it was so difficult to bring it back. But I had a kind of a nightmare about a couple weeks ago about John Anglin holding my head in his hands. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been thinking about when was John Anglin holding my head in his hands. And I remembered after a while the way he picked my head up was very, very gently. Now remember, I was just a little boy. And I felt like my mom was taking my head in her hands. I remember thinking, oh, it's Mom, and I'm asleep in bed, but I wasn't. I was asleep in the cardboard back there where I showed you. Well, what happened was John Anglin was gently getting his hands around my head so he could bend it back so Frank Morris could cut my throat. And I started to wake up, and I remember hearing Frank say, "Hurry up, he's waking up." And I opened my eyes, and I saw Frank with a knife about 6 inches away from my throat. Now, I know this is unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me, but I remember this so vividly because he had the knife in his right hand. Now, Frank was left-handed, but I was laying on my right side. John was behind me, and Frank was approaching kind of from the front and a little to the side. Well, Frank couldn't use his left hand with a knife from that direction. He had to put the knife in his right hand. And Frank had told me that he was somewhat ambidextrous anyway. So that would put his wrist over here. What I did was I hit his wrist like that, and it caused him to take the knife that he was handling like this with his right hand, and it went like that, but it didn't go very far, and he got angry, and I remember him coming back with this really angry look on his face, and I saw him coming at me. So, and I had already got my feet in place, and I took my feet and I kicked his hand again, and he went like that with a knife, and he cut himself on the other hand. Now that made him drop the knife, and he stood up and he said, "Oh geez, he cut me." And I was thinking, kind of instantly a thought of, gee, I didn't cut you, cut yourself. And John, I guess, kind of let go of me because he wanted to check on Frank. He always had to be making sure Frank was okay, his favorite person in the whole world. And when he did, I jumped up from there. Now, I grabbed that knife. I want to reenact this for you because I grabbed that knife and I took a couple of steps away from them where I knew they couldn't reach me, and I spun around and held the knife up like I was ready to fight. Now, you got to remember, I was a 5-year-old kid, and I'm standing up to 27 to 32-year-olds murderers. Serial killers who are trying to cut my throat with a knife between the three of them. They backed down and they looked scared. And I didn't know what to do. I knew my mother wouldn't like it if I got in a knife fight with somebody. I knew that she wouldn't like it if I brought that knife home because, it's not your knife. What are you doing with it? So I turned around and I ran across that alleyway that I showed you. That way I could get some more distance between me and them. And I just looked at them, and I think I said a couple of choice words to them. And they just stood there looking at each other. They didn't want to move. They had already backed up from me because I had that knife in my hand. And I can't believe they're scared of a 5-year-old with a knife, it just tells you what kind of bumblers they are and picking on little kids like that. And I took the knife and I threw it at them. And Frank picked the knife up and goes, "Geez, he gave it back to us." And I turned and ran in the house and locked the door. And I didn't even tell my mom about this one because I knew she wouldn't like it, because I threw a knife at somebody and because I took the knife away from somebody, and I figured she wouldn't believe the part about them trying to cut my throat anyway, so I don't believe I told her any of it. Probably why it took me so long to remember it. You know, at this moment, I can feel John Anglin slowly working his fingers around my head, and me thinking that it was my mom trying to maybe lift my head up and put a pillow under it, like I was in bed or something and kind of halfway dreaming. And I remember hearing Frank. If Frank hadn't have said, "Hurry up, he's waking up," they would have got me, because that's what made my eyes open enough for my vision to come back. And when I saw that knife, I started fighting back. And I didn't even know what was going on. I just knew something was wrong with somebody holding a knife 6 inches from my face and going for my throat. And the other guy had my head. I knew something wasn't right. And, you know, I grew up to be a fighter because of those guys. Grew up with a whole lot of personality traits learned from them over the years. Seriously ready to defend myself against something like that. For those of you who haven't seen the rest of my videos, please, before you make a bunch of negative comments on my video, watch the rest of them. I'm placing these videos here for one purpose. That's to inform the people who have an IQ high enough and are intelligent enough to understand what I'm telling you. Those of you little trolls out there that have nothing to do but call me names that you can't even spell correctly, okay, you know, shut up until you've seen all of my videos, because you little punks are the ones that I'm trying to protect, okay? Somebody might want to cut your throat someday, you know, and hopefully if you've seen enough of my videos, you'll know what you have to do to defend yourselves. So have some respect, you know.